Secretary Hegseth, your written testimony on page 20 includes a statement concerning the importance of FISA and Section 702, which is incredibly timely because this body is going to be voting today on 702, which could be expiring this week. You state this vital tool keeps Americans safe, provides critical intelligence to our warfighters, and is subject to a rigorous system of oversight by all three branches of government to guarantee the protection of the constitutional rights of the American people. Thought I'd give you a moment to expound on that because this is going to be very important because there's several people who right now in this body are going to be considering their support for 702's reauthorization.
Well, thank you for that opportunity, Congressman. Yes, this department strongly supports the reauthorization of FISA 702. And it is not hyperbole to say many of the most important missions we have executed could not have happened without the intelligence gathered through FISA 702. So we would urge members to support that so we can continue doing the good work of the American people.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate your comments that Iran must never be permitted to obtain a nuclear weapon. There have been many comments that have been made concerning allies who have not assisted or supported the effort. General Caine, there have been many allies who have been essential for us to be able to execute the functions necessary both for Midnight Hammer and for the current ongoing operation. I'd like to ask you to speak for a moment about the essential aspect of the allies that are supporting the effort. There are bases that are necessary, are forward operating facilities, both our allies in the Middle East, both our NATO allies, those in Europe, throughout. We would not be able to undertake this current operation without the use and support of facilities that we have in our bases throughout NATO, Europe, and the Middle East. If you could, for a moment, expound on the integral nature of our facilities that include those bases that are located within our allies.
Well, Congressman, from a purely military standpoint, allies and alliances are important. They allow us. You did a better job than I could on articulating the importance of access, basing, and overflight considerations. You know, who those allies are and the quality of those alliances are left our civilian leaders, but certainly we appreciate those allies who've helped us and assisted us along the way.
General, you would describe them as having been essential.
Yes, sir.
Because it's very important. I mean, we want to make certain that that we treat adversaries as adversaries and allies like allies, especially those that are essential. The King was here yesterday, and as he was speaking, he received a standing ovation when he implored this body to continue our support for Ukraine. In the 2026 National Defense Strategy, it assesses Russia will remain a persistent, manageable threat. It specifically identifies Russia's continued threat to Ukraine, and we have, of course, currently the presidential continued drawdown authority that can support Ukraine, and also the President Trump announced Pearl, the prioritized Ukraine requirements list, and in the FY 2026 NDAA, there is the $400 million that is included in the European capacity building within the defense security cooperation. General, the last time on the House floor with respect to funding for Ukraine, there was a vote in the House of over 300 members of the House that supported Ukraine. Could you please give us a description of some of the things currently that we're doing operationally to support Ukraine?
Congressman, a few of those are probably left for classified session. We continue through our security assistance group, Ukraine, to assist with some information sharing matters. UCOM continues to help.
But you would describe it as continuous and ongoing and essential for Ukraine with U.S. support.
Sir, much of the relationship.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary and General Caine, let me begin by thanking the men and women of the United States military for their service and their bravery. I recognize that our service members have performed with extraordinary courage and tactical skill, and they've done incredible things that our country has asked them to. Their professionalism and selfless service are not in question and never have been. What is in question is the purposes and the strategic direction of this war. Mr. Hegseth, as Secretary of the Department of Defense, you are ultimately responsible for the conduct of the Iran war. Any unvarnished review of what is happening right now in the Middle East would reveal a geopolitical calamity, a strategic blunder resulting in worldwide economic crisis. The result of Trump's war of choice is a serious self-inflicted wound to America. It will take years and a new administration to recover from the grave damage to our standing in the world, as well as our economy and our military. We must remember that 13 Americans have been killed in action, hundreds wounded, and thousands of civilians killed, including more than 100 school children. The risk of this conflict was foreseeable. I'm certain that the Department of Defense knew that it was likely that in a war with Iran, Iran would create an international economic crisis by blocking the Strait of Hormuz and thus stopping 20% of the world's oil. Was this existential threat considered? Apparently not. During the 60 days of Trump's Iran war, critical munitions have been expended at an alarming rate, depleting magazine levels below what is thought necessary to hold China at bay. It will take years and tens of billions of dollars to restock. A significant part of the necessary Navy and Marine force in the Pacific has been removed and sent to support the Iran war. Our support of Ukraine has suffered as supplies and defense systems are diverted to the Iran war. America has lost irreplaceable aircraft, radar systems, and strategic bases have been shown to be vulnerable. The continued lengthy deployment of ships, equipment, and personnel has sacrificed readiness. We know what we have lost, but what have we gained? Let's consider that the regime in Tehran is still intact, with new and more radical leadership, as are Iran's ballistic missile and drone forces, as is Iran's ability to rebuild their military industries. Also, as is Iran's coordination with China, Russia, and North Korea, and Iran's ability to choke off global energy supplies, and their stockpile of highly enriched uranium, which they only built after President Trump shredded President Obama's Iran deal in 2017. Secretary Hegseth, you have been lying to the American public about this war from day one, and so has the President. You have misled the public about why we are at war. You and the President have offered ever-changing reasons for this war. You've misled the public about the progress of the war. While the military has executed this war with tactical success, the strategy has been an astounding incompetence, doing immense economic damage to America.
Mr. Chairman,
and the
Mr.
world.
Chairman, with the personal attack on the Secretary, he should have an opportunity to respond.
He certainly
Thank
will.
you. At the time
When I
you're
am
doing
finished.
it.
It's the gentleman's time. He can use it as he sees fit and add an extra 5 seconds to Mr. Garamendi's time.
Thank you. You and the President are ever-changing reasons for the war. You have misled the public about the progress of the war. While the military has executed this war with tactical success, the strategy has been an outstanding example of incompetence. This war of choice is a political and economic disaster at every level. Despite the President's promise to lower the cost of living, gas prices are up 40%, and inflation is soaring so much for lowering the cost of living. The President has got himself and America stuck in the quagmire of another war in the Middle East. He's desperately trying to extricate himself from his own mistakes. It is in America's and indeed the world's interest that he succeed in that. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us today. General Caine, Secretary Hegseth, Mr. Hurst, thank you so much. I want to go to a statement I've been making here for the last several years, and that is we are in the most dangerous national security position that this world has been in since 1939. And we know that it's a critical effort that we undertake to make sure we can deter through the concept of peace through strength. Ms. Secretary, I'd like to start with you. We know that peace through strength has a number of tenets. I think the most important of those is presence. And we know that the United States has the Marine Corps Amphibious Ready Group, Marine Corps Expeditionary Unit, that provides us that presence. We know there are over 2,000 Marines and an aircraft combat unit that are on board those vessels, and they let us do a number of different things. That's the crisis response team that gets to go around the world. Today, as we speak, we have 3 ARGMUs that are deployed around the world. Unfortunately, that's an anomaly. It should be standard. Secretary Hegseth, the President and the combatant commanders need maximum flexibility to respond in multiple places at multiple times to combat and deter these threats. I just want to get your perspective on your goal to make sure we have a persistent 3.0 ARGMU presence, and to look at how we're going to make sure through our shipbuilding plans that we assure that we have the adequate number of amphibs that are being built. I think that number is probably right around 40. And then what are we going to do to make sure, too, that the A-sub-O, the operational availability, is going to be at the level where we can maintain an ARGMU 3.0 with the effort we have to put in to maintain these ships?
So thank you for the question, the substantive question. Ultimately, we support 3.0 ARGMU. That presence right now gives us a lot of flexibility. Yeah. And this budget supports moving in that direction to ensure that this administration and future administrations have that kind of strategic flexibility with the incredible capabilities the ARGMU provides. We saw it in Southern Spear. We saw it on the Maduro raid. We see it right now. It's a persistent capability. So I think you'll find our shipbuilding investments to meet that as well. But if I may,
sure.
I didn't get a chance. I didn't see a question in the statement from the congressman. I hope you appreciate how reckless it is. When I said reckless, feckless, and defeatist of congressional Democrats at the beginning, that came after watching you say the same thing on CNN this morning, a quagmire. My generation served in a quagmire in Iraq and Afghanistan, years and years of nebulous missions and utopian nation building that led us to nothing. What we have right now, the way you stain the troops when you tell them 2 months in, Congressman, you should know better. Shame on you. Calling this a quagmire 2 months in. The effort, what they've undertaken, what they've succeeded, the success on the battlefield that could create strategic opportunities, the courage of a president to confront a nuclear Iran, and you call it a quagmire, handing propaganda to our enemies, shame on you for that statement. And statements like that are reckless to our troops. Don't say I support the troops on one hand, and then a 2-month mission is a quagmire. That's a false equivalation. Who are you cheering for here? Who are you pulling for? Our troops are doing incredible work. They've done incredible things for the entirety of this mission and achieved incredible battlefield successes. And you sit there and go on TV for your clickbait about quagmires. It undermines the mission. Your hatred for President Trump blinds you to the truth of the success of this mission and the historic stakes that the president is addressing, which the American people support. Iran's been at war with us for 47 years. You want to talk about a forever war? For 2 months, this president has stared them down. He's going to get a better deal than anyone ever has and ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon. I know the American people support that mission, despite your loose talk and words like quagmire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. General Caine, I want to quickly go to you. We know all about the need for exquisite platforms, but we know if we're going to close the gap with our pacing threats, we have to make sure we have those expendable and attritable platforms. And we know those nation capabilities are key, and we have to be able to spin them up quickly, because that's the fastest way for us to, again, deter by peace through strength. Give us your perspective on how you see the urgency of getting that capacity not only in place, but getting that ability to go to scale and get those capabilities in the hands of our warfighters.
Sir, I think it's critical, and when I look at what OSW above us is doing, and the Deputy Secretary as well as Secretary Duffy, and frankly, the National and Defense Industrial Bases all rallying around the need to scale, along with the new entrants that are out there who are coming and bringing products to the joint force. A key is capacity.
Time's
across
expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Norcross.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank the witnesses for being here today. Mr. Secretary, it's well known that our Defense Industrial Base and Maritime Industrial Base has declined greatly over time. It's the shipyards. It's many of the things that you already spoke about. In my community, we used to have 3 shipyards, 40,000 workers. We've lost that critical job skills there and 40,000 people who know how to do it. And quite frankly, most of it went overseas because it was cheaper. Well, cheaper doesn't buy the security we need for our industrial base. I championed a provision in the 24 NDAA entitled Enhanced Domestic Content Requirement for Major Acquisition Programs. Had to do with our industrial base making things here in America long before this administration came in. The goal was to strengthen our supply chains and have that critical oversight, push for greater investments, much of what you're doing now on these major defense acquisition programs. So we passed that in a bipartisan manner because we knew that this was critical and things can happen. Lo and behold, here we are. There was a reporting requirement in that. That calls on you, the Secretary of Defense, to establish an information repository, issue rules, create a fallback process to govern the Department of Defense. We wanted to better understand much of what is being done here, but it's not being reported back to us. I sent to your office on January 8th, followed up on February 4th. We're years overdue on this report that will give us insight onto how we're addressing it. We hear what you're saying, but can you commit that we will get that report to us in the next 30 days?
Unless Jay has additional details, I'll make sure we look into it. Whatever we can get to you as rapidly as possibly, we will. We'll also check with the new Navy leadership and make sure they're complying as rapidly as possible with every aspect that could apply to shipbuilding. That's been our focus on the Navy side.
It's not just shipbuilding, major acquisition programs across the board. This is incredibly important, and they are ignoring this, and 30 days is being generous, certainly. Second issue is you talk about championing the American worker and how important this is, yet in a memo on April 9th, you terminate all the collective bargaining agreements across the DOD, taking away from hundreds of thousands of workers at DOD their collective bargaining rights that they voted for. There was nothing to indicate there were any issues with any of the bargaining agreements, yet you decided to take away from them. Over the last few years, we have increased the wages for those war fighters, incredibly important. This year, up to 7%. Yet on the other side of this, you talk about supercharging the defense industrial base. We are in this. How do you go and say, yes, we support the war fighters? They can't do their job unless we are building things that they can use. Yet, no evidence to prove that these collective bargaining agreements were a problem anywhere across the Department of Defense under Democrat and Republican administrations. How do you kind of square that circle that you care about this, yet you take away their voice in the job?
Well, certainly, sir, the great workers that whether they're contractors or DOD civilians that do the important work for us, the great ones are going to stay. And we've invested more in merit bonuses for civilians than any administration previous. So if you're doing great work, you're going to stay and you're going to have even more opportunities. But with our ear to the ground in those shipyards and other factory floors, there were issues with collective bargaining, which led to restrictions to the workforce and our ability to move faster.
If I may, just
and in
point
that
out,
case,
those are
we made the
outside
decision to provide
contractors.
additional flexibility.
You didn't
that we
take it
can move
away
faster.
from the shipyard workers. You took away from Department of Defense employers where there hasn't been any issues. Let's be clear. Those are independent contractors, and they have their collective bargaining agreements, the ones that work for you.
The ones that work for us should be at will like anybody else based on their performance. And if they're performing well, which I'm sure they are, as you've represented, they will have a job at the Department.
So where is the issue that you took away their collective bargaining rights? Why did you do it if it wasn't a problem?
Well, I stated up front, it has been a problem. There are plenty of cases, whether it's contract or inside our own department, where collective bargaining had led to arrangements and agreements that minimize the efficiency and effectiveness of employees at the point of their impact. That's what we were focusing on, and that's why we made the change, which we very much stand behind.
Well, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, Chair, and I recognize the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Stefanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hegseth, I appreciate the department and the administration's focus on expansion and innovation in the defense industrial base. That's particularly important for emerging technologies. For years on this committee, my office has led the effort to ban the procurement of Chinese communist drones, which pose a significant national security threat. And last year, after years of work, this committee finally passed my Countering CCP Drones Act, or Section 1709 of the NDAA, which was fully implemented in December. How does the FY27 budget scale domestic production and deployment of drone systems to ensure the U.S. has the decisive advantage against our U.S. enemies?
Well, thank you for the question. First of all, thank you for your work on that. Critically important. When you look under the hood of the ways in which China is trying to use critical elements of our defense industrial base and supply chain against us, or capabilities in the future that could hamstring us with options for a future president, it's staggering. So drones is one that not only have we recognized, but thanks to your leadership and the leadership of others, we are supercharging in this budget. Conservatively, $54 billion in drone and drone dominance and counter UAS. Jay just slid me a piece of paper. If you add it all up, it could be closer to $74 billion. We started a defense autonomous warfare group, to focus on this, but we're going to do even more. We will shortly announce a sub-unified command of autonomous warfare. Drones are so central to the future of warfare and where we get them from that we have to be able to both make the exquisite ones better than anybody else and also the attritable swarm, and then the ability to defeat them ahead of our adversary, learning from battlefields like Ukraine and Epic Fury. So thank you for your leadership. It is front and center in this budget.
I very much appreciate all that the department is doing under your leadership. One of the concerns I have is recent reporting indicate that while DJI, which is a communist Chinese drone company, is prohibited from receiving new FCC authorizations, there are still DJI products such as the DJI Avata 360 widely available in the U.S. through major retailers. These received FCC authorizations before my provision in the NDAA was fully implemented. So my question to you is, we need to close this loophole to protect our national security. Will you commit to working with this committee in my office to ensure that these products that pose a significant risk to our national security are no longer permitted, given the evident threat CCP drones pose to U.S. national security?
Congressman, yes, the department will commit to working with your staff and looking at that loophole, which we are aware of. And I missed in my first response, of course, that $54 billion is American-made drone dominance. That is exactly where they need to be, and that's where our focus is.
Great. Another emerging technology that's very important and has a strong tie to my district is quantum computing. China continues to invest heavily in quantum computing, sensing, and secure communications for military advantage. I represent Rome Air Force Research Lab, which is a hub of research when it comes to quantum. Secretary Hegseth, how does the budget proposal position the U.S. to maintain leadership in operationally relevant quantum technologies?
The country that dominates in quantum will dominate the future in C2, in comms, in every way that we fight. And so this makes the maximum investment possible here at home to ensure that quantum compute, and working across the interagency, by the way, this is not just a DOW issue, this is an interagency issue, to ensure that we've got the ability to scale and outcompute adversaries who are racing for the same code.
General Caine, throughout my time in Congress, I've pushed for the department to optimize its approach to quantum and develop a strategic roadmap. In your opinion, which quantum capability areas offer the most immediate benefit to the joint force and should be priority investments moving forward?
Probably some of the work in crypto and quantum to make sure we can see, sense, understand, defeat, and protect our own stuff. So that's where I'm most interested in it right now, ma'am.
Great, and I also want to use my remaining time. I just want to invite both of you to visit Fort Drum, home of the 10th Mountain Division, the most deployed division in the U.S. Army since 9/11. In the first Trump administration, I had the honor of hosting President Trump, where he signed the NDAA in my district, and it's been a privilege to represent them. So encourage you to visit that installation before the end of this year. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you and I agree that Iran is a national security threat to us and our allies. Now, earlier you called us feckless for questioning your war. Do you think Congress was smart or feckless when it failed to ask tough questions of the Bush administration and gave them a blank check for Iraq?
Well, if you're trying to compare this war to the Iraq
I'm just asking you,
war,
do you
which
think
the
it was
president
smart or
was the first
feckless?
one to call a stupid war, then it's a false comparison.
Okay, well, probably a good idea to ask tough questions. So let me just ask you a few questions. Did you advise the president that we should attack Iran?
We were, first of all, in this position in the cabinet, we never talk about what we would advise the president to do or
Well,
not.
do you
to
think
do,
the president or you deserve more?
I've been in every meeting.
I understand
with
that,
the
Mr.
chairman and
Secretary.
everybody else as those
Secretary,
critical
I'm asking
decisions
the
were
questions.
made, and he got every perspective possible when it came.
I'm
to
just
making
asking what your perspective is. Are you afraid to take ownership of this? Do you think it was a good idea or not?
As I've consulted the president, do I think it's a good idea to confront a nuclear bomb
To start
in
this
the
war.
hands of the? Imagine what the world would look like right now if Iran had a nuclear weapon.
Okay, so let's
just imagine.
Which, by the way,
if
every
they
other,
had one,
every
which the
previous
Obama deal was
administration,
going to allow them
including
to do,
the first Trump administration,
they had one.
prevented them from having a nuclear weapon. So, listen, how is this war going? Do you think we're winning?
militarily on the battlefield, it's been an astounding military success.
No, but are we winning the war?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning?
Well, I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports, which
Okay,
is
so
always
we've blockaded their blockade. So
use.
they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade. That's like saying, tag, you're it. Or, you know, if President Madison had said, well, the British just burned down Washington, but don't worry, we're going to burn it down as well. Chairman Caine, did the military have plans for the idea that Iran might blockade the Strait?
Sir, thanks for the question. I'll answer it this way. You know, in this job, I have to maintain trust with a variety of constituents. To
Okay, I'm
include
just
the president.
asking if the military
Yes,
had
sir.
plans.
As always, my point in this is, as I explain the role, my point in this is we always offer a full range of military options that are carefully considered with the associated risks with those options and the considerations therein.
So,
and we
Mr.
always
Secretary,
do that.
did you consider this risk?
Of course, this department has looked at all aspects of this risk. And
So then
because
why did you
this
send the
department looks,
minesweepers, the only minesweepers we had in the Gulf, to Singapore weeks before the war started?
we have lots of capabilities that you may or may not be aware of at the classified level.
Okay, and
to deal
so,
with, to deal with
by the way, would
mines.
the
And
Trump-class battleships have helped with this?
you're talking about a
Minesweeping.
prospective future battleship, which we welcome in the fleet.
Okay, so you're supportive of the battleships.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How much has Iran profited from your administration lifting the sanctions on Iran when you started this war?
I can tell you Iran is financially devastated right now.
Okay, well,
in conjunction with the
they've
Treasury
earned about
and
$14 billion.
Operation Economic Fury. They're at a point where between the blockade and what we've done to them militarily, remember, they don't have a Navy. They can't contest the blockade.
Okay.
Between what we've done to them
What kind of
militarily
a
and
Navy can
financially,
they buy
they're at a
for
place
$14 billion?
where they have very few options.
How many Chinese missiles can they buy for $14 billion? Does that sound like winning?
They're not. We're ensuring, and they're not buying Chinese missiles.
Okay. You know, at the end of the day, this also has a cost to us. If let's say this war costs $100 billion, I mean, you've already said, give us more time. It's only been 2 months. It could go on for 20 years like Iraq and Afghanistan. Let's just say it costs $100 billion. What is that to the average American taxpayer? Do you have any idea?
Well, unlike foolish previous administrations, it won't go on.
No, I'm just asking.
For years and decades.
But let's just say it's
Sitting in this
$100 billion.
position, it's hard to imagine how
You know
it was
that?
allowed those things to happen. You were a part
You
of
know
that
the answer
war.
to that?
So was I. I never.
I'm
knew what
just
the end
asking if
state
you know
clearly
what
was.
your war
Now I
costs
know
the
what
average
the end
American
state is.
taxpayer.
What is the cost of Iran having a nuclear weapon that they wield
I'm just
over us?
asking if you know the cost of the average American
I'm
taxpayer.
asking you what the
It's about
cost would be of
$600.
that.
So for the American taxpayers out there, my constituents, some of the constituents you wanted to represent in Minnesota, I'm just wondering if they have an extra $600 lying around to pay for your war. I think that's just a question that we ought to ask. Now, quickly, on March 13th in a press conference, you said we will give them no quarter, no mercy. In order for no quarter or no survivors is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. You understand that's murder. Do you stand by that statement?
The Department of War fights to win, and we ensure that our warfighters have the rules of engagement necessary to be as effective
Okay, so
as
just to
humanly
be clear,
possible.
you
which
called
they are.
Democratic members of Congress to be tried for sedition for reminding our troops to follow the law. But when you tell them to commit a war crime, you stand by yourself.
For insinuating that the laws
Congratulations,
that
Mr.
we're giving them are
Gentleman's
unlawful.
time's
What a
expired.
great
Chair
guy.
now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Desjardins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here today. And I'd like to thank you for your commitment to our advancement in space, Golden Dome, and nuclear modernization, all which are critical. And also, I understand we're going to start some reproduction of the MQ-9 Reaper drones, which you, Mr. Secretary, and Ms. Secretary share my great state of Tennessee, and we know the 118th Air Wing, the National Guard operates Field and conduct many of these missions, and they do so with great precision. So thank you for that. Secretary Hegseth, you commissioned as an infantry officer in the U.S. Army National Guard in 2003. You've been deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, Guantanamo Bay. You have been awarded 2 Bronze Stars, the Combat Infantryman Badge, Joint Commendation Medals, 2 Army Commendation Medals, among other recognitions. You have seen military actions from both an operational and service member perspective. Have you ever seen operations with the scope and scale and complexity of Midnight Hammer, Operation Absolute Resolve, and Operation Epic Fury?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Congressman. Not only have I not seen missions like that, but if you earnestly go into our formations right now, and you talk to colonels and majors and staff sergeants and 2-star generals, and you ask them about the environment of our military right now and its capabilities right now, compared to under the Biden administration, under Obama, they will tell you it is night and day. Even the ranking member acknowledged that the troops performed incredibly well over the past 15 months and have demonstrated to the world. These are not new troops in a lot of cases. These are the same troops with new leadership under President Trump, who gives them every authority, under a department that ensures they have what they need. I have operators looking at me saying, for the first time ever, we have everything we need to accomplish the mission, both in equipment and in authorities. That matters when you go 37 hours around the world for Midnight Hammers. That matters when you go downtown in Venezuela and grab the indicted dictator of a country in the middle of the night in the most fortified location. That matters at the outset of the Iran conflict. It matters during Operation Rough Rider, which there's a reason why the Houthis aren't in this fight right now, because they experienced 50 days of the American military under President Trump. That matters in the Caribbean and our fight against designated terror organizations. This military is unleashed, and morale is at a level that this country has not seen for decades and decades because of the leadership of President Trump and because this War Department allows them to get back to basics. No more distractions, no more debris. It's simple accountability, training, standards, lethality, and they respond to it. And it's that response that's manifest in highly and historic successful military operations led by our incredible joint force, who are grateful to have a commander-in-chief that has their back.
Well, I can tell you for that, our nation, myself, and all of us are incredibly grateful. Secretary Hegseth and General Caine, with your vision and steadfast commitment to our nation's service members, you have both overseen the beginning of a generational transformation of our armed services. This budget request reflects that commitment by building and sustaining our defense industrial base, increasing service member pay, housing, and benefits, robust funding for Golden Dome missile defense and space capabilities, and the emphasis on the peace through strength doctrine outlined in the National Defense Strategy. Based on the Defense Department's recent track record of successful missions, can you share some examples of military action that illustrate exactly how your leadership and vision for the Department of War is translating the peace through strength doctrine into an operational reality, and what psychological impact that may have on our near-peer adversaries, such as China and Russia? And I'd like to get both yours and General Caine's perspective, if you can take 30 seconds each.
I'll keep it brief. Reestablishing deterrence was one of the core pillars of what we set out to do after Afghanistan, after October 7th, after the war in Ukraine, after Lloyd Austin went AWOL for a week and no one seemed to care. The world took notice of that. And through the actions we've taken swiftly that I just laid out, the world has recognized that American power is back, and the willingness to utilize it shows that we can achieve peace through strength.
And General Caine, in terms of our adversaries?
Yes, sir. You know, when we look at the totality of actions that we've done over the last year, one thing leaps out at me that I think is clearly and unambiguously seen by our adversaries or those that may consider it, and that's our ability to integrate and synchronize a whole range of capabilities that we have in the joint force, information, cyber, you know, deception, jamming, air power, sea power, land power, et cetera. And I think that ability, and I'm so proud of our joint force, those young...
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, now I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, General Caine, Mr. Hegseth, and Hurst for being here today. I associate myself with the comments of Ranking Member Smith and Mr. Garamendi, so that I won't repeat a lot of what has been said. Mr. Hegseth, I recently realized that we have something in common. I'm also a fan of Pulp Fiction. And no, the movie is not an accurate portrayal of the Bible. You know what I'm talking about. This president and his administration have claimed to be the most transparent of all time. With that in mind, I'd love to get some straightforward answers today. Some estimates show that the Trump administration's war of choice in Iran is costing taxpayers around $1 billion every day. In addition to spending taxpayer money on a war they don't want, it is also driving up costs. The cost of gas, while the cost of living is skyrocketing under this administration's policies. To me, and I assume to the American people, it is unclear why we started this war, how it will end, and what anyone gained from it. Mr. Hegseth, about how much money has been spent on this war to date, and how much more do you anticipate spending?
Well, as our comptroller laid out, the estimate is less than $25 billion at this point as far as an expenditure. And the question I would ask this committee is, what is it worth to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, considering the radical ambitions of that regime? I mean, almost every member of this dais at some point has said, whether it was 2015,
thank you for your answer. I'll proceed to
Iran
my
can
next
never have a
question.
nuclear weapon.
Thank you for your answer.
President Trump is the one that's willing to make sure it doesn't happen.
Supposedly, we had taken care of the nuclear capability last time around. And now this war, we're at it again, because obviously we said we did, but we didn't.
In a way that
we know,
the United States military can do.
I want to reclaim my time. We know that the cost of oil and gas has gone up as a direct result of this war, and the American people are feeling that pain at the pump. In an attempt to alleviate the high price of gas caused directly by this president, he lifted sanctions on Russian oil. The way I see it, this is a massive gift to Putin and Russia's struggling economy. Mr. Hegseth, is there any concern that easing sanctions against Russia will allow Putin to continue funding Russia's illegal war against Ukraine?
Well, we've seen Russia's and Putin's inability to make effective battlefield gains, just like their inability to defend the Maduro regime with the billions of dollars of systems the Russians sent to Venezuela in order to defend him, which were defeated in 15 minutes. So Russia's military capabilities are no match for ours.
And you don't believe easing the sanctions is helping Russia?
Well, we have the best energy team in the planet
it's just a yes or no.
White House, and we're going to ensure that
this is not deja vu. It's a simple yes or no.
I understand the energy dominance that this administration has unleashed.
All right, well, I'll proceed to my next question.
Strategy.
Last week, it was announced that the Department of Defense is no longer requiring service members to get their annual flu shot. Now, this is an easy one for you. It's a softball. Don't screw it up. The rationale was to, and I quote, restore freedom to our joint force. This has been a requirement since 1950 because it is an effective at preventing the spread of flu among our troops. It's not some new woke requirement, as you like to lean on for much of your rhetoric. This decision is actively making our military less safe and less prepared. Mr. Hegseth, at this time, are there plans to remove the mandatory requirement of other vaccinations like measles, mumps, and polio?
We made very clear in our announcement that it applies to service members having a choice as it pertains to the flu vaccine.
Don't you think that's a little reckless?
No, I think allowing well-informed Americans who serve our country to make a choice is not reckless. And commanders will still have latitude, say, for a submarine or something else to make a decision for a unit about whether it could be mandatory in a particular circumstance. But overall, our troops have earned the right to be able to choose about something like that related to their health.
Mr. Hegseth, I stand by what I said last time you were here. You were incompetent then, you're incompetent now, and you're the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to incompetence. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, now
Other than that, I'm doing
the
great.
gentleman
Thank
from
you.
Mississippi, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, don't you think it was extremely reckless to mandate COVID vaccines for the healthiest and most unlikely to get COVID and kick them out of the service if they did not comply with a, although legal, crazy order from the previous administration? Don't you think it was reckless to require that those soldiers and Marines and sailors had to take that COVID vaccine?
Congressman, thank you for the question. Not only do I think it was reckless, but we point out the nature of the emergency and lack of actual data on it. We think it wasn't legal. And as a result, we're working very hard to ensure that any service member who is pushed out is brought back in. If they were forcibly pushed out, back pay and rank and everything that comes with it. Those soldiers and troops of conscience who had to make that choice, I think are the best troops in our force.
Listen, I'm grateful that we have two great National Guardsmen sitting at that table today. As a longtime serving Guardsman who just retired, I'm so proud of y'all and what you mean for our total force. It's not a National Guard, it's not a reserve, it's not an Army, it's not a Navy. It is a total force, and thank y'all for recognizing that. I just want to go back to some of the Iran stuff. I don't know, maybe they're in a different world than I'm living in, but from where I live since 1979, Iran has been at war with the United States, although we refuse to acknowledge it, whether that's Hezbollah, whether that's the Houthis, whether that is Hamas, whether that is trying to build nuclear weapons, exporting terror everywhere. I know for a fact when I was in Iraq, both tours, that EFPs made by Iranians killed our troops. I know for a fact that many of the munitions, I know for a fact many of the militias in Iran that were Shia-based were there to attack Americans at the willing knowledge of the Iranian government. Do you agree they've been at war with us and are still at war with us and the world since 1979?
Of course, for 47 years from Beirut to Baghdad, Iran has sought the most dangerous weapons in the world to try to achieve death to America. And if they were to get the most dangerous weapon in the world, a nuclear weapon, they would most certainly use it, which is why this is at the level of seriousness that President Trump was willing to address it. And that's what I think so many in this body misrepresent. North Korea is the lesson. Everybody thought North Korea shouldn't have a weapon. Under the Clinton administration, they gathered so many ballistic missiles that the ballistic missile shield allowed them to blackmail the region and the world to say, we're going to get a nuke and you can't do anything about it. Under this administration, them weakened by the 12-day war and what happened with Midnight Hammer, the President made a bold choice on behalf of the American people to say never will Iran, with their view of death to America and death to Israel, have a nuclear weapon, because if they have it, they'll use it. And he's taken that bold action in a way I think the American people, when they understand the nature of that threat, and they do, they support it.
Chairman Caine, wow, I've been around a long time. Can any other military in the history of the world pull off Venezuela, Midnight Hammer, and Epic Fury the way that our great warriors that defend and project power for our nation? Are you aware of any other nation in the history of the world that could have done that?
I'm not sure, and I remain very proud of the Joint Force. I'll also say that we're a learning organization, and we're going to continue to look at the things that go right in any operations that we're tasked to do, and we're going to get better every day. So we do not want to sit on the successes and assume future successes. We owe it to the nation and to the citizens to constantly improve no matter how well something goes. So I'm incredibly proud of the Force. That said, I'm even more proud when they come back after that. They go into a team room and they start debriefing to make sure that we do it better next time, whatever it may be.
And my final point, I just want to talk about what a stroke of genius it was, greater than I would have thought, to blockade the ports of Iran And that blow economically to their entire economy and to their leadership and everything else, it's going to take a little bit of time to play out. But that was so smart because it is more effective than any bombs, and those bombs were effective in Midnight Hammer. They continue to be. But until we kill their will to create a nuclear weapon, they will always be a nuclear threat because they've advanced far enough along. But that blockade was so important. And it amazes me now we're crying about high gas prices when they were $2 a gallon more just 4 years ago or 5 years ago under the previous administration. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Caine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hegseth, tomorrow is 2 months since the war has begun. You've testified that it was $25 billion in cost in terms of the munitions we used and what we paid for it. But when you add to that the damage that was done to our bases and today's dollars for buying replacement munitions and replacement aircrafts, what has the total cost been over the last 60 days?
That number right now reflects the total cost that we're seeing.
Including buying today's dollars, the new weapons and replacements, and including the damage there? That's your testimony?
If there's
under oath?
adjustments to that, I would defer to the Comptroller on that.
And how much are you seeing in terms of, are you asking in terms of supplemental funding just for the Iran mission from this committee?
If and when a supplemental is submitted,
Yeah, how much?
the majority of it would not just be for,
But
for
what would be the
Fury, it would be
ballpark for Iran?
munitions related to the entirety
Just
of
a
what
number,
we want to
sir.
get done.
A number, what would you submit? What are
It
you
would be
requesting?
within on Iran, it would be less than $25 billion, but there's a lot more we would ask for beyond
Well,
just Iran.
you're saying it's
considering-
25 billion. Okay, I would just, if you
Okay.
come back, you want to revise those numbers, because all the experts are disagreeing with you when it comes to today's dollars and damage, but you can revise it. How much did it cost American taxpayers in terms of the strike to the Iranian school where kids were killed? Do you have that number? In terms of the missiles we used?
As I've said, that unfortunate situation remains under investigation.
You don't know how much it
15-6
costs the
investigation, but I
taxpayer?
wouldn't tie a cost to that, to anything.
It's a reasonable question, no, sir? I mean, our taxpayer money was going there. Do you know how much it will cost Americans in terms of their increased cost in gas and food over the next year because of the Iran war?
I would simply ask you what the cost is of an Iranian nuclear bomb.
I'm going to give you that opportunity.
I would simply ask you what the.
Yeah,
you're
but,
playing gotcha
sir,
questions
sir,
about
no, it's
domestic
not.
things. I'm not.
You're saying it's a gotcha question to ask what it's going to be in terms of the increased
Why
cost
won't
of
you
gas
answer what
and
it costs to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear
food?
bomb?
I give you that, sir. But let me.
What
if you
would
could
it
just
cost?
ask my
What would you pay to ensure Iran doesn't
But
get a nuclear
can you-
bomb?
Do you,
what would
sir,
you pay?
I reclaim my time. Do you not know? You had no one do the analysis of what the increased cost of gas and food on the American people are going to be?
What is the cost
Let
of
me
Iran
give you
holding
the
that
number.
straight at
Let me
issue
give
with
you the
nuclear
number.
weapons?
It's $631 billion, which means it's an increase of $5,000 a year for American households. Now, let me give you this point. You're saying that your operation is preventing a nuclear Iran. Will you acknowledge that there is an economic cost to the American people for doing what you believe is necessary to make Iran denuclear? Will you acknowledge the economic cost?
We have an incredible economic team that's managing this better than what the previous administration did to our economy, what the previous administration did with inflation,
what what's upsetting. I reclaim my
did with
time.
COVID, and you're going to lecture this administration about the economy?
You know what is upsetting to me?
Incredible.
You didn't even do the analysis on how much it's costing the American people. It's one thing if you said, okay, it costs the American people $5,000, but we think it's worth it. That's what we've done in World War II and other wars. Here's what it costs. You got to pay for it. You don't even know what the average American is paying. You don't know what we paid in terms of the missiles that hit the Iranian school. You don't know what we're paying in terms of gas. You don't know what we're paying in terms of food. Your 25 billion number is totally off. It's the incompetence. It's the incompetence. Let me ask you this. Certainly, maybe here we'll find agreement. There were still 440 pounds of low-enriched uranium, correct, when President Obama, after the JCPOA? Is that accurate?
The amounts and types are classified.
Okay. Will you acknowledge that there were 970 pounds of uranium enriched after Trump tore up the JCPOA?
The JCPOA was a terrible deal that allowed Iran a path to a nuclear bomb.
You deal with vague platitudes. I'm asking you about numbers. Like, you don't know what gas costs, you don't know what food costs, you don't know what the operation costs. You know, I get sound bites, but how about numbers? Do you know how much the enriched uranium was after you ripped up the JCPOA? Trump did.
I'll give you a number. I know that, as was stated by early on, the price of gas is twice as expensive in California, your home state, as anywhere else in the country because of the horrible policies your state pursued.
You know what? It used to be that that type of stuff worked, and then you started to lose the people that you campaigned you wanted to be for, because you said you wouldn't get us into bad wars. You said you would bring down the prices. You know what I'm sad for? I'm sad for all the people who voted for Trump. I'm sad for them because you betrayed them. You betrayed a lot of that MAGA base. And you know who knows that? J.D. Vance knows that.
Gentleman's time's expired.